Hey, welcome back everybody to Sichos HaRan Daily. It's been a few weeks since we've learned together, but I'm excited to get back into it now that Yom Tov is over and the craziness of before Yom Tov is over. So as we normally do, I just want to begin in the middle of the busy workday by taking a moment before we learn to just take a breath and settle ourselves, to transition from whatever it is that we were in the middle of doing, to be present to whatever the Sicha that we're going to look at today, Sicha Chaf Beis, is going to offer us. What it offers us today is not going to be what it would have offered us yesterday or tomorrow, depending on where we are. And so we should just be aware of where we are and what we're doing, and internally and externally, to be able to fully appreciate whatever Torah is being revealed to us hayom. So we're up to Sicha Chaf Beis. Sicha Chaf Beis is quite short, easy to get through today. Tov ma'od misha zocha lios mekurav l'tzadik amiti. Nachman says that it's very, very good. It's very good for someone who is lucky enough to be close to a true tzaddik. Ki lasid lavo ksiv, because in the future, lasid lavo, in the time to come, Yemos HaMashiach, when the Tachlis Habriya, when the goal for all creation will have been achieved. It says in Eov about that time, La'achez bekanfos ha'aretz v'yinaru rishayim mimena. Sheyachos bekanfos ha'aretz v'yinar es ha'rishayim. That at a time in the future, in the context of Eov, this is at a point where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is questioning Eov's questioning and sort of saying, right, do you know anything? Are you the one who is going to grab the corners of the earth and shake the Rishayim from it? But Rabbi Nachman takes this as indicating that la'asid lavo, in the future, in the Zman of Yemos HaMashiach, when all clarity will be achieved. Part of that process will be that, so to speak, metaphorically, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take hold of the corners of the earth and shake, like shaking something off a blanket or something like that, or a towel or a sheet or a tablecloth. B'yanar es harishayim, he'll shake off the rishayim from the earth, it seems. And Rabbi Nachman says, "Avo mishu makurav l'tzadik," somebody that's close to a tzaddik amiti, someone who's close to a true tzaddik, azai yachzik v'yachez atzmo b'tzadik. That person will be able to take hold of, strengthen themselves, and take hold of the tzaddik themselves. V'hiya nishar kayam, and they will remain standing amid all the upheaval of the world, right? When the upheaval that causes and achieves the shaking off, so to speak, of the Rishayim, the person will be able to stand through that, to survive that. V'lo yeninar im Rishayim, they won't be shaken off together with the Rishayim. They may be a Russia. It may be that they don't have the stability, they don't have the grounding to withstand the turmoil and the confusion and the displacement that really challenges and refines us in order to usher in Yemos HaMashiach and Achros Yamim and the Tachlis HaRan. But by connecting to and taking hold of a tzaddik amiti, Rabbi Nachman says, a person will be able to hold on and stand strong through that experience. Because they're holding on, to a tzaddik. So I think it's just worthwhile. I've shared this before, that Rabbi Nachman's emphasis on tzaddikim, and the emphasis on tzaddikim in general that often we find in many parts of Pnimius HaTorah, is something that I personally struggle with and oftentimes am made uncomfortable with a little bit. In part because I grew up in a world and still inhabit a world in which we are suspicious of power, and oftentimes we associate Sichos, or people who get bandied about and framed as tzaddikim, with power, and oftentimes the exercise of power, and even more often the abuse of power, unfortunately. And so the idea of this personality of the tzaddik that we're all supposed to grab onto, hold on to, connect to, and that will save us. It can be an unsettling idea. And as I've shared before, I don't feel very beholden to be sort of orthodoxly Breslov in the sense of just unquestioningly taking what Rabbi Nachman says and accepting it at face value. I don't think that, number one, in general, when it comes to Torah, that doesn't really give good credit and a proper credibility to the Torah that we're learning. It doesn't help us draw out anything more out of the Torah than just what exists as face value. And the only way to there's so much there, and the only way to do it is to really try and question and try to see how we can integrate what we are encountering at face value with all of the other things that we have already encountered at face value, and all the other things that we think we know, or the other values that we're committed to, and figure out how those things interact, and figure out how they can be synthesized biyichud to create a harmonious understanding and a harmonious truth. So I think it's important here to understand, number one, what it is that we're talking about when we talk about it, tzaddik amiti. When you learn Rabbi Nachman broadly, when you learn Rabbi Nachman's writings broadly, a true tzaddik, I think, first and foremost, is really an incredibly, incredibly unique character. Incredibly unique and an incredibly rare character. In a certain sense, incredibly rare. In another sense, incredibly not rare. Because on the one hand, a tzaddik amiti, a true tzaddik, is as a whole person is incredibly rare. On the other hand, like everything else, we know al derech pnimius haTorah, everything is contained within everything. Akol nichlal bakol, and if there's, as the Baal Shem Tov teaches in many places, Parshas Noach and in other places, we all have little bits and pieces of these concepts within ourselves. And Rabbi Nachman talks about this, of course, in Torah Reish Pei Beis in Azamra, that we all have an inner tzaddik, a nekudas tzaddik, a nekuda tahora within us, an aspect of tzidkus within us. And so, on the one hand, it's very, very rare to encounter a tzaddik amiti. On the other hand, it's incredibly common to be able to access the small aspect or facet of that sort of tzidkus amitius that is present within each of us. Although it may be very, very, very deep down, there's a point within us that is so essential and so uncluttered by all of the masks and accoutrements and clothing and so on and so forth that we wrap ourselves in to function in a world where we think we can't exactly be who we truly are in order to get along. That place is also tzaddik amiti, and to be able to connect with that place, that's a place of certainty, that's a place of security. To be secure and connected to that deepest place within ourselves, right? The tzaddik amiti within a person, leaving aside for a moment what a tzaddik amiti is sort of as a person outside of myself, but to connect to the tzaddik amiti within a person or within myself, is to find within myself a place of absolute emunah, a place of absolute goodness, a place of absolute connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, may be associated with the neshama, which is a chelik elokam imav, may be associated with the aspect of the neshama we often refer to as the yechida, the connecting point between me as an earthly creation and the source from which that creation stems. But that point, which is wholly good and wholly perfect and wholly whole, and therefore can experience a level of emunah and bitachon, because everything is exactly as it needs to be, and I am exactly as I need to be in this moment. That's a foundational point of security, which understandably then, to be able to connect to that, can provide someone with kiyum, with a sense of survival and a sense of stability within all of the upheavals of these shiyasu b'kanfos ha'aretz v'yinaras harishayim. When trying to shake off the rishus within us can be unsettling and upheaval, and it can be scary, and it can be unsettling, and it's chaotic. And one can survive it and sustain themselves through it to reach the end point, to reach the Asid Lavo, to reach the point at which all that's left is an absolute and total transformation into a place and a person that exhibits absolute emunah. That can be achieved by connecting to that tzaddik amiti internally. I would also say, I think, that if we abstract away from just that sort of internal look at the bechinas tzaddik within a person, we can also understand this in perhaps a less, for me, I guess, a less scary or less intimidating way by appreciating that ein tzaddik doma l'chaveru. There's no absolute tzaddik out there. There's no such thing as the absolute tzaddik. The Leshem Shavo V'Achlama reminds us that even Moshe Rabbeinu, and especially Moshe Rabbeinu, is reminded that you can't see my face. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu, and the Leshem questions why it's specifically Moshe that has that question and wants to see, quote unquote, Hashem's face, that full and total Gilui Elokus, a full understanding of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, to the extent that a creature can understand it. And it's Moshe Rabbeinu who's told, you can't. And the Leshem says, well, if it wasn't Moshe, then you would think that perhaps there's a person out there that could see it. But when Moshe is told that you can't see it, this reminds us that there is no such person. There is no such singular person. Instead, what's out there are bechinos of different kinds of people, different kinds of tzaddikim amitim, that different kinds of people can and should connect to appreciate the milos and chisronos within themselves. Rabbi Nachman writes that one of the essential functions of a tzaddik amiti, and I guess also one of the essential ways in which you can know that someone who appears as such or is marketed as such and really is a tzaddik amiti. This is a person who is able to reveal to others both their milos and their chisronos all at once. A person encounters and connects to a tzaddik amiti, and they appreciate how good they are and how much they have to grow all at the same time. And the fact that they need to grow so much doesn't detract from how good they are and how accomplished they are. And the fact that they're accomplished doesn't take away from their awareness of how much still they need to do. I'm such a person who reflects back to me and through whom I can appreciate both my milos and my chisronos without either compromising the other. That's a tzaddik amiti. And for each and every person, depending on what the milos and what the chisronos are, there are different tzaddikim out there. The Arizal writes, and the Rashash very famously expands on this, they write that there's no person who's similar to any other person. There's no tzaddik who's similar to any other tzaddik. Each tzaddik has a particular role to play. Each tzaddik has a particular thing to reveal in terms of there being a reflection, a mirror for the avoda of others. And so this idea of being connected to with tzaddik amiti, I would say, is not being connected to the tzaddik amiti, but connected to a tzaddik amiti. And the one that I'm connected to today might have to be different from the one I was connected to yesterday, and perhaps tomorrow I need to connect to a different one because my avoda changes and who I am changes, and my milos and chisronos change day to day, and the path to being able to be mashlim and make whole those things changes from day to day. And so too, there are many, many tzaddikim out there with many, many different paths and many ways of reflecting back to me the things that I need to change. But the very fact that a tzaddik is a person who can reflect back to be both my milos and my chisronos all at the same time, I think, is also a helpful way of understanding why it is that being connected to, being makur to a tzaddik and attaching oneself to such a tzaddik can help weather the storm of this nior of the Daled Kanfos Haaretz, of this shaking and cataclysmic upheaval of the world in order to usher in the time of La'asid Lovo. Because a person who has milos and chisronos and sees both without their milos compromising their chisronos through ego, and without their chisronos compromising their milos through a self-defeating attitude, that's a person who finds a sense of security and stability in exactly where they are. And so regardless of what the upheavals happen to be, one can find kiyum in that. Okay, Bezras Hashem will continue tomorrow with Sichos Chaf Gimel, wishing everybody a wonderful day.